Welcome to ParaSQL. In this demo, we are going to show you some applications that have been built with ParaSQL and then go back and show you how it was done. Let's jump right in. This is a bill of materials application that keeps track of the labor and materials that go into manufacturing each item. They are organized into a parent item and then various child items. For each of the labor and material items, you can drill down and look at the supplier configuration and change any of the values. This is a field service application. They have it broken down by area where they can drill down and see the various pieces of equipment that are near each other and the fault codes and service codes that are associated with that piece of equipment, which are obtained via telematics. So in one place they can see the fault codes, the scheduled maintenance, and the unscheduled maintenance for the equipment that's near each other. This application is one of many for a logistics company that manages things like manifests, bills of lading, and everything else that has to do with warehousing and third-party logistics. This application is a purchase order application that automates the purchase order process. The purchase orders are generated automatically by the system overnight by looking at restock thresholds and quantities on hand. The POs are automatically generated and show up here waiting for someone to review them and approve them. So you can see the status is new. They might come down here, click on particular line items, make sure that the sales history is adequate for that item, and if it is, then they might approve the PO. Once the PO status is changed to approve, they can click email approved POs and the purchase orders are automatically emailed out to the vendors. This is another field service application that is used on an iPad, and they capture signatures in the field for installations, reinstallation, and maintenance tasks that were done. They capture both the installer's signature and the customer's signature. This is another application used in a warehouse. This shows the items that are available to be picked and shipped and those that cannot be picked for whatever reason. In this case, we can see that this item is waiting. And when we drill down to see why it's waiting, we can see that one of the items is not pickable. If we look down, we can see that there actually has been a purchase order that's been sent out, and so this should clear automatically. And finally, we have an automatic invoicing application. This is part of a larger process that begins with orders being taken to this system, then being approved by an account manager. Once they are approved, the system automatically generates a shipment request that shows up in the portal for the warehouse. Once the warehouse marks that item as shipped, then an invoice is automatically generated and appears here waiting for approval. Once the approval for a particular invoice is given, they are automatically emailed out to the client with an attached PDF file. So now let's go back and see how these applications are actually built. When you create a new application with ParaSQL, you will be presented with this screen. On the left, you will see the palette, and on the right, your application canvas. The palette contains the tables, virtual tables, and objects that you can drag into your application. Most applications start out with some tabs and menus, so let's quickly build that. We can drag a tabs object off, resize it to fill our application canvas, maybe rename the first tab Order Demo, and rename the second tab maybe Reports. And we might have several reports. We might want to put a menu object inside of that Reports tab so that we can have multiple reports. We also might want an icon in the application in our header region, so we can set the icon. And then maybe we also want some text to name this application. Let's just call it Demo App. And maybe we want to make that 18-point bold, and we want to resize that and put it there. Because this is a demo, we already have some tables in our database, but let's create one anyway. We create table, normal database table, give the table a name. My table normally would be customers or orders or something like that. Add some columns, name, address, and maybe even a column to capture signatures on a touch screen. We just go down here and change the data type of the column to signature, or maybe one for images and photos. We call it photo, change its type to image. and also maybe a document field to be able to store documents in the database. Again, let's just choose the data type of document. Click Create Table, and that's all there is to that. You can, of course, set up foreign key relationships between tables. So in this case, we have an order line that is linked to both the orders table, and it is also linked to the items table for which item is being ordered on that particular order line. ParaSQL also has very advanced features for integrating existing enterprise systems and APIs. This is covered in more depth on our website, but as you can see under the Integration tab, there's a long list of plug-and-play integrations, including integrations with SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, Microsoft services, and other REST and XML APIs. It is based upon an advanced implementation of SQL Med that is covered in more depth on our website. But the idea is pretty straightforward. Rather than managing the integration task at the application level, why not have the database manage the external data? This means that even RESTful APIs like Salesforce map directly to virtual tables in your ParaSQL database. We think it's the future, and let's show you how it works. To integrate a plug-and-play integration into your application, the first thing you do is define a SQL Med data source. You can define as many data sources as you want. Here's one for a Microsoft SQL Server hosted in the Azure cloud. Here's one for Salesforce, and here's one for a fully custom REST API. Once you have the configuration parameter specified, you can click Test Connection. Once you have defined your data sources, the next step is to add a virtual table from the data source. So we can say Create Table, Virtual Table from Data Source. Then we can choose our data source. In this case, let's choose the custom REST API. Then we can choose which table from that API we want to map. In this case, it's the Latings table. And we simply click Create Virtual Table. Over here on the palette, you will see that the virtual table has been created and the data types from the API map to columns in your virtual table. The beauty of this is that you can then use these virtual tables in your application, just like their regular tables, and read and write to them without worrying about the underlying details of the API. There is more information about our SQL Med architecture and its ramifications on our website, and we encourage you to explore the possibilities. Now let's start building the UI of our application. One of ParaSQL's most powerful features is nested tables. Let's start with a complicated example rather than a simple one. We're going to start by clicking on the orders table and dragging off a record object. Then we're going to delete some excess fields from the UI. Let's resize this, and now let's put a customer record inside of this orders record just by dropping it in. If we look at the data links on the outside, we'll see that it's joined these by customer ID. Let's rearrange some of these fields so that they look a little better. Now let's drop in an order lines record. I'm going to click on the order lines table, drag a record object off it, and drop it also inside of the order. And let's rearrange the fields into a column or layout and hide the ones that we don't actually need. So we'll have item ID with the pick list and quantity, and we'll have a line total that we're going to put over to the right here. And let's just resize a couple of things real quick. So now already we have three tables, an orders table, a customers table, and an order lines table. And this will run just as it is right now. However, we're going to want to embellish this. This is all of the orders, and then with each order we can see each order line. Of course, we'd want the item information here, and we'd want some other features as well. So let's do that. Let's begin by dropping yet another table into this. In this case, we're going to drop it inside of the order line. So as you can see here, we're already getting a fairly complex structure. Let's delete all of the fields from this except for the description and price. Drag in the description and drag in the price. Let's rearrange the fields a little bit. Let's make this one read-only and this one read-only as well. And then we also probably want to have a formula that calculates across. So here we want the line total to be equal to the unit price multiply the quantity. To do that, we click on that field, click Calculate, change it to a calculated field, make it read-only, select order line quantity, and then multiply it by the first value in the child record, which is item.price. So quantity times price for our line total. ParaSQL has a built-in minimal recalc engine. You can think of it a little bit like a spreadsheet, so that whenever these values are changed by the user, it will automatically trigger recalculation of this field. We probably also want our order total to calculate automatically, and again, because it's based on minimal recalc, this will happen automatically as the field values change. So again, we are going to say calculated field, read only, and we're going to do, in this case, the sum of the order line totals. So now when we run this application, we'll see that we have the item ID, the quantity, the description, the unit price, and the total. Also, if we were to change this from 1 item to 10, you would see that this automatically recalculates to 160, as does this value down here. Likewise, if we are going to change the item ID to something else, when we change it in the pick list, which is automatically built and we can customize, it changes the item, which changes the unit price, which triggers a recalc of the line total and the total. This makes it extremely easy to build screens of high complexity. Let's go back to the application, because clearly we'd want a couple of more things here. We might want some text for a header across the top of this. So we would add a text object, maybe make it centered 18 point and reverse video, centered 18 point, and maybe a nice dark blue with some white text. And then we'd call this an order, or maybe order detail. And then we're also going to need some buttons. So we're going to drag off a button here, and here we're going to add an order. Maybe we'll just call this order here. We're going to add an order, maybe put an icon on it like that. And here we're going to select the button, click button actions, and then connect that button to this record. And then we're going to say add individual record. So when we click this button, it's going to add a record to here. We can also add a save button over here. Maybe we want to give that one an icon as well. And in this case, we're going to hook up that button to this record object, and we're going to say save. And because we're saving the outer record, it will save all of the inserts, updates, deletes to both the parent record and all the related child records, all as a single transaction, and automatically roll back if there is a problem with any of it. Of course, we probably also want to add some line items, so we can add multiple line items to the order. So we can put an add button down here, but in this case, let's put an icon on it. In this case, we're going to connect it down to this inner record, the order line. And so rather than add one, we're going to add a record at the end every time someone clicks that button. So let's run this application and see how much further we've come. So here we can create a new order, and when we pick from the built-in pick list the customer information is filled in automatically. We could enter in a status. We could add another order line. Again, the pick lists are built automatically, and you can fully customize them. And as we enter in the value here, we can see that it calculates across and down, and then we can continue to add additional order lines. So let's add 5 of these, and you can see it goes across. We can hit save, and it's all saved as a single transaction. Of course, that UI isn't very good, because we also need a way to be able to pick which orders we're talking about. In this case, maybe we want to make it simple so that the user can select the customer first, and then the order, and then see the order details. So here, we're going to drag off a report object, and we're going to hide all of the columns except for the customer name. Then we're going to drag off an orders report, and we're going to remove all of the columns except for the order date and order number. Now we're going to create a link between this mini customer report and this mini order report. To do this, we click on the customer, click data link, and then the red boxes show you what it can connect to. We're going to double click down here and connect it to orders, and it sees that it's automatically linked it by customer ID based upon primary and foreign keys. Then we're going to go a step further and connect the order to the order details. So we're going to create another data link, and we're going to connect it to here. And it's linked by order ID because, again, it knows the primary and foreign keys. Now, if we test this application, we have something that's starting to resemble a real application. We can click on a particular customer, and then we can click on their individual orders to see the details. We can add a new order like this just as easily. ParaSQL allows you to nest records as deep as you want, thereby allowing for screens of unlimited complexity without resorting to programming. To customize a pick list, in design mode, just open the pick list. You can resize it, hide the columns you don't want, join in other tables, set filters, and a wide variety of other things. In addition, because ParaSQL is a true no-code/low-code platform, any of these objects can have events assigned as easily as this. In this case, it's a button, and we're adding a click event. Here you can break to the API and do whatever you need to do if it's not a built-in feature. Different objects have different event types. Buttons have click events, fields have change events, and key press events, etc. The browser API is fully documented and easy to understand. Having hooks to add code exactly where you need it, but not in other places, is a key feature of ParaSQL and makes for rapid development of even complex applications. ParaSQL also has full support for complex modal panels, or pop-up panels as some people call them, which are important when designing more complex applications. To create a modal panel, simply drag one off the palette and drop it in your application, and resize it as needed. Give the modal panel a name, order example. Modal panels are built just like the rest of the UI in your application. We can drag off a record object, then we can drag off another record object and nest it inside it. Anything that you've seen elsewhere in ParaSQL works here, including data links. So you could data link from this object and create a link to this object. To open a modal panel, you can put a button in your application, maybe say show details. Maybe give that an icon as well, make it look like a pop-up panel. Then when you click this, you're going to give it a button action, which is going to be connected to the modal panel, and you're going to say show panel. Now, when we click that button, this panel is going to show. Let's just test this so you can see it in operation. Now when I click this button, you'll see that it pops up the panel with the associated record that was selected down here. Modal panels can of course open other modal panels, and those modal panels could contain reports, charts, records, anything, making it very easy to build drill-down applications for your users. Let's jump to another application and see what those advanced field types like document fields, image fields, signature fields, etc. look like when you're building an application. And if we run the application, we can see this is a document field with documents. We can view a file, delete a file. We could upload another file. Image fields show up as image columns and reports and fields and table. When you resize a column, the thumbnails are automatically created on the fly. Signature fields look like this. We could come in here and click here to sign and sign away. Barcode fields, full support for barcodes, and formatted note fields. ParaSQL also has built-in robust reporting capabilities, including roll-up reports and complex computed columns. If we go back into design mode in an application, we could take a report object, add a computed column, and specify a formula of arbitrary complexity, including full support for correlated subqueries and advanced statistical windowing functions. In many cases, the formulas are simple, like this one that just sums the order totals by the group. ParaSQL also has support for a wide variety of visualizations. You have your standard bar charts, pie charts, but you also have things like Google Map charts, where you can click on a pin and show associated data, or Gantt charts, or even heat maps. All of these chart elements can be data linked to or from other chart elements used in pop-up panels for drill down, etc. Creating a visualization is as simple as selecting the table where the data will come from. You can actually join multiple tables and do complex computed columns in visualizations just like you can in reports, and then dragging the visualization off the palette and then choosing its chart type. Maybe you want it to be a Google Map chart, and maybe you want it to be a hybrid satellite map. The information and design mode shown on the chart overlay tells you which columns feed which data in the chart. So in this case, in a map chart, column 1 is the address and column 2 is the location description. So you might have something like 355 Sierra Mall, Stanford, California, and it's the university's CS department. Simply add and remove columns and unhide columns as needed and rearrange them to match the order specified by the chart type. That's it, and it's ready to use. Let's briefly cover how to share an application, security, and roles. To share an application, click the Share button, then Add User. Specify the user's email address and the role that you want to assign to that user. Click Send Invite, and an email will be sent to that user. You can create as many custom roles as you like. Just go to Tools, Security Roles, click Add Role, let's call this one Sales Manager, and then determine which permissions they have. So let's say the Sales Manager can view customer information and can view item information but not change it. And when it comes to orders, they can both view and add orders and update an order status. That's it. That's all that's needed in order to create a new security role. ParaSQL has full support for triggers, stored procedures, and scheduled events. Let's take a look at a couple of these. In this case, you might use a trigger for server-side error checking, like preventing an invoice from being deleted if it has already been processed. Or in this example, you might use a trigger to send an email notification when something happens, like a change in a shipment status here. To send an email, simply insert a record into the ParaSQL email out table with the to address, subject, body, etc. Note that email notifications can be simple or complex and may include attachments for things like automatically generated PDFs. Note also that you can easily send email to your database with a simple CC or BCC and then process it as needed to link it to other records in your database. Here is another trigger that calls a stored procedure to automatically generate an invoice when a shipment has occurred. Let's take a look at that stored procedure that you can see right here. In this stored procedure, we declare some variables and then create a cursor to loop through the items that were shipped and create a corresponding invoice for those items. Finally, let's look at a scheduled event. Scheduled events allow you to run tasks at predetermined times. For example, you might have a scheduled event that runs nightly to create purchase orders based upon quantity on hand and restock thresholds, or just about anything else you can imagine. In closing, keep in mind that the SQLmed data sources that we briefly covered earlier in this demo and their corresponding virtual tables that map to either enterprise data or APIs can be accessed just like any other table when writing triggers, stored procedures, or scheduled events. This makes it incredibly easy to perform what otherwise might be a complex integration task. We hope you've enjoyed this overview of ParaSQL. We know we've presented you with a lot of information, and of course you'll have many questions. To schedule a personalized demo where you can drill down and ask questions as needed, simply send an email to info@parasql.com. We look forward to meeting you. Thanks, and have a great day.